honest, as soon as COVID dropped its shadow here and we jumped on the planes, within a millisecond of sitting down with a potential client or a current client, the penny drops. You just thought, well, geez, we've missed this. And it was just that connection with people. And it's just, we all have to do business the way we are now over the laptops. But I just think I really, really miss that interaction with people.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Ashley Austin, who's based in Melbourne, Australia. He is the Asia Pac Sales Director for Urbanise. Welcome, Ashley. Good to have you on.
Evening to you, Al.
Yes, evening and morning to you. Now, Urbanise is a facilities and strata management software. Kind of your sweet spot is for those in property development or government, and you're head of property operations or facility. This might be a platform that you're going to want to check out. Now, Ashley, I want you to help me understand, like, the beginning of the concept of where Urbanise is focused on, or actually on your website says the world leading software for the property sector. Like, what's the real challenge or problem that you guys are solving and focused on?
I think it's different for some sectors, but there's usually I suppose a common thread. And so where we started originally, Alex, was very much in the Middle East, in the Emirates. So Urbanise was essentially an R&D office out of Melbourne with a bunch of developers that would build tech platforms for banks and all different client base.
What year was this?
So about 2006 to 10, Urbanise was doing smart city work. Cisco were an investor into Urbanise, and Urbanise were the smart city provider. And the Middle East was one of those footprints. And what fortuitously happened in Dubai was they got seconded into EMA, which is an exceptionally large property developer, over for the Dubai government. And they were tasked to build that resident-focused technology for EMA. So those large gated communities where the expats would live, and that property portfolio that EMA built and developed, Urbanise built a lot of that resident-facing technology and those e-commerce platforms where you could procure services. And it was quite ahead of its time. And what happened then was it sort of got pushed into the large facility management companies that maintained those developments and communities on behalf of the developer. And so I don't think there was any grand plan initially to become what it is now.
But slowly morphed as the need started to rise.
It absolutely did. And I think what happened over there, like a lot of things, especially in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, if you can get lucky over there in terms of, if you get that right client, it can really put you on the map. And then I suppose it brought a lot of attention to the development team and the smarts of Urbanise. And we then listed on the ASX in Australia in 2014.
Okay.
And so I was based over in the Middle East for 10 years, and I moved back to Melbourne. I'm a Melbourne boy, but I headed home 2014 when we IPO'd on the stock exchange here. And essentially what we were in this part of the world was a bunch of developers in a Melbourne office, but we leveraged what we did in Dubai. And essentially it's still, when people look at the tech stack of Urbanise, that part that we built in those really early stages is actually still an integral part. It's still probably a differentiator in terms of what we do against other, say, CWMS platforms out there. It's this e-commerce, it's this resident-focused, I suppose, view of what we do.
In a kind of prep chat before, you were helping me understand it's both being able to manage the property, the facility, but it's also this consumer-facing, or rather residential-facing, this ordering of services like Uber, like I want to get lawn care, I want to get whatever, and you've been like a third party where then all the service providers can be on that platform and get access to the residents as well? Yeah,
very much so. So I think it was revolutionary then, not so much now. I think and when we IPO'd, it was the tagline on the ASX was Uber for the built environment. And I remember thinking, and we ran with that. It was, I think we'll put our hand up to see who came up with that. But it actually it resonated. It actually was what we were. Mm-hmm. And I think there's other platforms in that space, but that part of what we did then just sort of sits in between an asset management, a strata platform, which is, I think, a multifamily over in North America, and that works management FM piece. So we sort of got those 4 or 5 moving bits, but when they work together, it's really powerful. It actually, it's quite good to see. But it then gave us, I suppose, opportunities to push into sectors that weren't, say, the aged care, the retirement, the disability schemes, where those commerce platforms and those resident connection pieces and communication pieces are really critical. We sort of fell into those sectors because we had that as a core part of the offering there from what we built in the Gulf.
It's like you had the technology, and so these types of opportunities or facilities needed that type of management, and it was just a match. Now you joined 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
7 years this September. Yeah, so I knew the team quite well. I was based over in the Middle East. I knew the guys really well from Urbanise over there. I used to know them and sort of watched their growth and what they're up to over in the Emirates. And it was one of those things, a bit fortuitous. My wife was more than happy to get back to Melbourne after those years away. And I think they needed I didn't come from a technology background, but I suppose that sales and that networking, the branding space I was okay at. And I was a Melbourne boy. We're going to list on the ASX, and Melbourne was head office. So it timed in well. And yeah, it really was. And it's one of those things that I was a square peg in a round hole. But what happened was, I think I needed Urbanise, and Urbanise needed me at that stage. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I think what we've been able to do even in what we do in Asia and South Africa and some of these countries, and even though we're only still fairly young into our journey, I think we should be pretty proud of what we've done so far.
What are you most excited about being in this space now and seeing how the technology can be used, rather? Before a facility uses a technology like this, like what's the difference? What's the problem that's really being solved here and the difference it can make?
I think sometimes when we play with the more mature sectors, I enjoy that because I learn a lot from just sitting on the other side of the table with some of these operators, especially in the mining sectors and the larger utilities. They're very refined, sophisticated, really know what they're doing. I think Urbanise is something that has got a very different approach to some of the larger maybe engineering systems that they use or they've been using before. But I've actually really enjoyed the experience, and it's an educational piece for us to educate some of those sectors that technology just has never been a part of, Al. And I'm only talking probably from more Australia and New Zealand, where the aged care, the retirement space, and the disability scheme, there was a very, very, very small percentage of those sorts of operators and entities that had any form of technology around the property space or governance or risk or compliance or contractor management. And it's been a journey, but we've seen the success we've had up to now. It's probably because we've spent the time to understand the sector. And I think now's an amazing time in terms of growth and becoming more of a mature sector in that space. And it's really well funded by the governments. And it's not a sector that we played in the Emirates or Asia or South Africa. So it was one that I don't think was on our radar initially either. It was one that we had the components of what we did in the Emirates again, that some consultants had seen and said, that's actually a really good fit, because what it does, it connects the residents and all those key stakeholders, and it gives people a voice. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. I really enjoy watching some of those clients from inception, when you first show them a tech platform and you can sort of see the trepidation or the concern around, how is this going to be a really large piece? Is it a big business transformation? Is it something that's going to maybe upset the apple cart, as they say? But it's wonderful to watch it through the journey and watch our implementation team on board that, and then that whole accounts management team take it, and just to see the results. And I think now more than ever in that sector, there was a Royal Commission recently into the age space, and there's a huge push now for technology, not just around property, but just around that sector, to really give it transparency and some governance and risk mitigation. But yeah, I've probably enjoyed watching how technology is actually pushed into it, because I know when I first came back from the Middle East, there was some sectors that were a bit of a closed door. It was a nice to have, but never a must-have with what we do. And I think everything bar a finance platform was probably pushed out of the door. But now it's more commonplace than ever.
Now, I'm curious from your perspective of the global usage of technology, from Australia to the Middle East to to the US. Is it like certain areas where there's a more of adoption, and it's like, Asia and Australia, or where you have certain technology platforms that they use there, and what prevents kind of adoption across the globe?
I suppose it's been when we first IPO'd, Al, and we went on the stock exchange, we was very scattergunned with our approach, and we had small clients, big clients in far-flung places around the world. And we realized very quickly, and I think most people do on that journey, it's not the best way to try to grow. It's appealing, and it is nice to chase the shiny things at times. But I think probably the last 3 years we've had, and Sarah Jane has come on as our CEO, has just been amazing. He's pulled in, I suppose, some of the delusions of grandeur that we had. We went off and thought we were recreating something that, look, I think the other thing is places like the Emirates are a perfect fit, and Qatar, and what we do in Oman and Abu Dhabi and these places. We've got an exceptional business over there, and the guys have done a sterling job. But we have something that's exceptionally different to some of our competitors there, and it's that large residential platform with the strata piece and the FM and asset management, but they're integrated. And that was a number of years worth of effort from a huge team of our developers in Sofia that have pulled that together with the same. And it's just but what it's done is it gives those large clients such as Nikhil, Dubai Asset Management, UDC in Qatar. I mean, they are massive names over there. We're the perfect platform for them to run all of those key components off one single platform, and with all of our analytics laid over the top. So it really is just that perfect solution for that part of the world. And I think we definitely, our growth, and we raised a significant amount of money at the tail end of last year, and that's purely around growth, where before that, we've got 53, 55 developers. So it's a substantial development up. It's always been around the growth of the two technology platforms and getting them to a certain level. We're always very skinny in regards to pure sales. I mean, there was literally a small handful of us globally. And what we're doing now is making sure that headcount on the sales side, both direct and indirect, through channel partners and building that partner ecosystem and having our own internal sales force, starts to really mature and grow. And because we know now we've probably got that, the structure, we've got that documentation on the back end, we have the clients globally, but I think it's now time that we push. I know the board are very keen, a lot of our investors, just to take that next step, not that scattergun approach that we did 6, 7, 8 years ago, but to make sure that it's more targeted. But we've got the platform now that we know works in a number of Asian countries. We know dominates in South Africa. And so we would love, look, to be honest, I think we all at the senior level have always thought at some stage we would, like everyone would love to scratch the surface in North America and just sort of see where we stand.
Yeah. The user experience, whether it's a residential or it's a facility property manager, I feel like everyone is wanting more. It's like in today's technology world that everyone wants more, especially in the consumer environment. We're all constantly getting new apps. And so in the business world, we're kind of expecting it. I'm curious, are you seeing it on the global scale? Is it everywhere, or are there certain countries or sectors that really show a greater desire for an increased tech solution in the business environment?
Yeah, I definitely think they come in that more mature space that I was talking about. Some of the really large, what we call here FM outsourcers, those large, huge service providers. So they would have thousands and thousands of headcount all around the country, executing services for the government or whoever. So they are very used to working off the back of huge global tech platforms. And with that there's a huge price tag to that, but the breadth and the depth of functionality is just incredible. And sometimes there's an element of maybe it's too much for some sectors or it's too big. It's a huge finance system, but they've tacked on asset management and facility management. What we try to do is now probably we're the best of breed, we believe, over on this side. And we try to integrate and work really closely with some of those ERPs or some of those finance systems to ensure that the people in the field, I suppose, and the people that are actually managing the properties and executing services probably have that ease of use, something that they can capture and work with very easily. And I think that's where we've been able to get some real successes purely through those integrations and partnering up with some of those bigger systems that have modules. And we try to stay in our lane quite a bit. We try not to go and build too much technology outside of what we do. Yeah. But yeah, I do think one thing that always comes back, we do a lot of think tanks and workshops with clients, and it's always just make it easier. Make it, and I think that's with any technology. If it's 3 steps to get to the desired result, how can we do it so it's only 2 steps? How do we just press one button? And I think that automation of a lot of those activities, that's where we have a lot of bandwidth, I suppose, on the development side, focused on streamlining that piece.
What really fascinates me as I'm doing more and more interviews with different tech companies is the siloing of services. Like you really focus, okay, this is the sector, this is a problem. Yeah. And there's so many different new SaaS solutions out there, but it's like for one specific purpose or solving a specific need versus an ERP that says we can do everything that for everyone. Sounds like you agree with that kind of trend where you guys are focused on is you don't need a broad system that does everything, but hey, come and you get the best for both facility management, asset management, and work contract management. I think that's another piece, all in just a specific tool.
You're right. And I think what's happened with COVID, and I'm sure it would be on a global scale, not just in front of what I see, but what it's done is it's made some of the larger businesses really circle back and say, are we getting the bang for our buck with all these technology platforms we have? Is there a way to reduce the volume and the amount of platforms and technology within the business? And I think sometimes being a lightweight version of a big system is a lot more appealing now to CFOs in particular, one, because of the price tag. And sometimes, I suppose, when times are good, sometimes you don't have to scratch the surface there. Sometimes you don't, you're making money, but we've realized here facilities and the property sector has been massively impacted. And so some of our clients are the large service providers who execute the service. Their portfolio that they manage and maintain has been dramatically reduced because everyone's in lockdown, as an example, in Melbourne. And what that's done is everything's been impacted on every level. And I think it's been the first time for a lot of these companies, and they openly admit to it, that they've actually had to go and value engineer, not just people in the field, not just some staff, not just different parts of the business, but what the hell are we doing with our IT side of the business? And is there some platforms out there that maybe don't have every module? It mightn't have fleet, or it mightn't have a HR system, but the core things that we really need to manage our business are in there, and it's agile. It doesn't take 6 months to implement. It can take weeks to implement. And it just gives, I think it's opened up discussions that maybe I don't think people would have had before what's happened over the last 12 months.
You've given me a clarity that it is a global effect of the pandemic, that there's a push for, all right, let's reassess our technology that we're using in our business. Is it too much? Is it cumbersome? Do we need to add other elements? It's really an accelerant on the entire economy.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It is. And I think it's across the board. It is every part of a business now is really starting to look at it, but it's opened up opportunities for us. It has actually even changed tact on the development's life and what we're actually building over the next 12 months. Some of that's had to really pivot only because some opportunities or some sectors have come towards Urbanise that we didn't think we were the right fit for, but we might have a small piece of functionality that's missing. But we know that's now a market that's got an appetite for platforms such as Urbanise. And we're doing work with clients such as Anglo America and some of those large that I don't think we would have necessarily been exposed to prior. But I think a lot of it's come through our integration efforts. We've got an exceptional team based in Sofia and Pretoria in South Africa, where it is purely what we do is just integrate into, and we've built a really healthy ecosystem of sort of complementary technology. And some of that's client-led, some of that is contract-specific. But what it's done is it's actually, we've been able to leverage that relationship on a personal, professional level and actually go to market a little bit. And it's just been a wonderful experience, I think, for all of us.
What are some of those integrations that you guys have focused on building?
So there's property leasing, which was never on the property management side. So a distinct leasing module was something we always lacked. And I think Urbanise we were a company that always wanted to build everything, and we weren't strong around partnering. And it was something I just don't think the business understood. And I think there's an element of what you don't know, you push away from. But I think now that we're seeing, so it might be best to breed contractor compliance and inductions and those pieces. There's safety and HSE, those things that we do within the platform, but not at that level that some of those sectors dictate. But the property management and the leasing side has been an incredible one for us. Space planning. So for universities and some of these sorts of things, as I said, we've tried to make sure over the last few years that we've just stuck to the core strata and facility asset management platforms, just to make sure that they're on the right direction and we're not getting pulled into other directions. And but yeah, it's definitely, and it's not so much just the technology benefit. It's just that cross-pollination of networks and contacts and relationships that have given us all, that whole group, when we get to, you sort of pull each other into a sector or into the market. And it's been wonderful. It's been a really good experience. And that's why I kept saying it's that indirect sales model for us, I think, is going to be a real focus of ours over the next few years.
Help me understand, taking a step back here, the end consumer, residential person, how does it affect them when the properties they're in and the environments they're in are using a platform like yours? It's being managed as such. Well, what's the difference between, as a consumer, as a resident or whatever, in one of these places, the difference between when they're using a platform like yours and not? How does that play out?
Yeah, well, I think there's two ways for it. I think one is it gives them, so there's that e-commerce customer portal which sits with them. They can raise services, raise requests, track jobs, all of those sorts of things. But then we have a number of applications that are from that strata, the residential side of the business as well. And it's essentially their communication pieces. I suppose it's that sticky factor, as people call it. It's really true. And I think everyone at the moment on the management side and the development side are trying to come up with some initiatives that draw people towards them instead of the building next door or that other portfolio. And especially on the commercial side, there's a real push around technology now. Anything that enhances the experience for a resident in any way is what they're looking for. And I remember there used to be a lot of dialogue and communication around it, but when you dug into it, you thought, geez, you couldn't really see if anyone was doing anything around it. There's a lot of taglines and a lot of conferences, but it felt like it was the same rhetoric. But now it's visible. You go into a lot of these buildings now and you see technology. It's everywhere. You expect to have an application. You expect to be able to order a service and to be able to see it, track it, and it comes to, and so we've tried to do that, not just on that commerce side, but in that facility management, asset management. So it's connecting all those little stakeholders within that ecosystem. And so then there's transparency all the way through. And what we try to ensure that everything is tracked through the platform, and we report on that, we dashboard that, we drive the analytics through that. And I think that's the biggest single benefit out of all of this, if it's harnessed, is that data. It's an incredibly powerful piece when it's managed right. And it's one of the things that I think the people that are leading some of these sectors, that's their driver. And when they work with that part of the equation and wrap the analytics around things and actually ensure that that's their focus. You can see the benefit of technology really quickly. It's quite wonderful.
For the future, because again, you've painted nicely the history of where Urbanise came from and where you guys are right now. What can you share, kind of what's coming up, the roadmap and the plan of where you guys are headed?
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's for me, and on that sales side and at board level recently, it's definitely been around growth. And there's no country specific. I don't think it, but I do think for us, there's a real appetite. And it's a funny time to be thinking about it in the middle of what's happening. You don't feel like you can project anything too far, especially all the way down here. You want to be able to go and do things, but you actually don't know when you can or what the capability of being able to do it. I think we took for granted that we could just jump on the plane and we'd be in Singapore tomorrow, then we'd be over in Malaysia and South Africa. And it was just this freewheeling, I suppose, but it gave us, the more people you met or the more people that saw what Urbanise were doing, you can see I suppose the enthusiasm for it. Or can we dig into this a little bit? Can you guys come back here? We actually want to see if we can get you guys involved with this part of our business or explore some opportunities together. And it just felt like we're sort of sitting in purgatory in terms of that growth because of what's happening. But so for me, it's around opening up the partner model and the channel partners and building that ecosystem that we work with and through in different countries. I think that's the fundamental thing for me, because if we can't physically and internally drive a lot of that growth because of what's happening, then it's just finding those right partners and the right entities that we work with, that there's a connection with on not just the tech level, but we're on that same trajectory, or we're that missing piece of the puzzle for them. And that's what we've seen the results of quite quickly here when we've done it. It's working with people that really need a platform. And I suppose we become a little bit of an agile tech partner for people as well. We've got a very healthy development office in a number of countries, and we do that really well. We're still at our core a really good software development tech. That's what we are. And off the back of it, we've built a SaaS model. We're a services company now, but this part about being able to build exceptionally great technology really quickly, I think that's still our differentiator, that things can move quickly. We can build some bespoke technology in a really quick way for key clients. And it's probably leveraging that, but it's getting Urbanise in front of people that haven't seen it before, that could hopefully be the sort of people and the partners that we hope for.
I love it. Now, if I can ask just a kind of a fun question for you, actually, if you could wave a magic wand and have any kind of technology just come into existence, what comes to your mind?
That doesn't exist now?
That doesn't really exist now.
Bloody
time travel. Really.
Yeah. Time travel. No, something anything to expedite the tyranny of distance. When we used to travel really heavily for work, and you see the benefits of it as soon as you're in front of us. As soon as COVID dropped its shadow here and we jumped on the planes, within a millisecond of sitting down with a potential client or a current client, the penny drops. You just thought, oh, geez, we've missed this. And it was just that connection with people. And it's just, we all have to do business the way we are now over the laptops. But I just think I really, really miss that interaction with people, and just anything that can help us get back to what it was in some way. I don't think it'll ever get back to that level of, I think we traveled for the sake of traveling. Sometimes you felt like you weren't doing your job unless you're on a plane, which is silly. But I'd love us all to work out a way to be able to, I suppose, be in front of each other more and be maybe a bit more strategic about it, not just travel for the sake of it, but to have some real focus and an agenda. And when we get there, actually things move quickly.
You make it interesting.
Yeah,
that desire to be that human connection again, and that we'll get back to, because I believe that desire is there, but now it's going to be a leverage. You'll use technology in many cases, but then when you do get in person, it'll be very specific and planned and
I think so. Yeah. And look, I used to enjoy a lot of those meetings where there was no distinct agenda. It was just, and so you half the time it wasn't work related, and that's, I think, where you build relationships where it's outside of work and it's just talking. Sometimes right at the end you think, oh shit, actually, wait, we're here for work, aren't we? And I think that's when you know there's someone across the other side of the table that you click with, you get on really well with, and you want to keep catching up, and work will come. And it's just that I think we all really miss. And even internally, we have offices in 7 countries now, but just we used to have a wonderful, and we still do, but it just, you can feel everything feels at arm's length a lot now. And I'm really looking forward to the day when we're all back in. But I do think you're right. It's just having more of an outcome-based travel. So we know then when we're catching up with it, let's make sure we're trying to all get something out of this. And that, but yeah.
That'll be where we want to get to. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for kind of sharing the vision of what we want to get back to, but also the history of Urbanise and where you guys have been focusing on the history of it, but where you guys are headed. And it's I fully believe using technology like this for every area of business, definitely when it comes to facility management, it's going to come into key play. For those that want to learn more about Urbanise, you can go to Urbanise, Urbanise.com, and can be able to dig into it. You guys are primarily in Australia and Pacific, Asia Pacific, and Middle East.
Yeah.
Make up your main areas that you guys are focused on.
So we have Sofia is a development arm over in Bulgaria. South Africa, we're in Pretoria and Cape Town in South Africa. We're in Malaysia, Dubai, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. Got
it. Well, then again, go to urbanise.com to learn more. Thanks again for your time, Ashley. It was great to chat with.
Well done. Have a good night. Thanks so much, Al.
And we'll see you on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.